Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for your latest video of sports betting insight. It's myself, Matt Hill, joined by my regular Premier League betting show host, Brad Walker. But we're here to talk a different sport today. It's all things boxing. We've got a fantastic Riyadh season card on the horizon on this Saturday, which is the 22nd of February. As is the case with these Riyadh season cards, it is stacked from top to bottom with high quality fights. I think whatever you think about the Saudi influence in top level sport, there's no argument that it's been a good thing for boxing in terms of getting the best, fighting the best, and bringing top quality entertainment for fans of the sport. And this is no exception here. The headline fight on this card is the rematch between Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol. The first fight, I wouldn't go as far as saying controversial. We were discussing it off camera. Some would say it was controversial. I think it was a very good fight, a close fight, lived up to the hype, and it went the way of Beterbiev by a majority. Plenty would argue that Bivol maybe did enough to edge that fight, but we're going to get a rematch. They're going to roll it back, and we'll see if things are going to be any different. Brad is our in-house boxing expert aficionado. Brad, I'm going to hand over to you. Tell us a little bit about how you saw the first. Did you think that Beterbiev was a worthy winner there? And do you see things changing second time around?
Yeah, like you said, Matt, I think some people would say controversial just because of the nature, of Twitter is if you score a fight in a couple of rounds in one fighter's favor and it goes the other way, people start screaming robbery. I certainly wouldn't use that word. But like you said, Beterbiev did get his hand raised by way of majority decision. Many felt it should have gone to Dmitry Bivol. On the night, I did edge it to Bivol. I think I had it 7-5 to him. But again, as you said, I had no qualms with Beterbiev winning it at all. I've actually watched the fight back again this week and I scored it a draw. So that again tells you just how close the fight was. There were so many rounds in there where I was just sat at the end just thinking, who am I going to give that to? It was such a difficult fight to score. But yeah,
that's what I would say that as well, Brad. Like, can it ever be a robbery when there's obviously rounds where you could feasibly give it either way? Do you know what I mean? So, like,
yeah.
If there's 3 rounds, say, that are debatable, then that's a massive room for difference on a card without anyone being wrong, really, isn't it?
Well, yeah, exactly. If you score at 7-5 to one fighter, all you've got to do is score one round differently and you've got a draw. So how can it be a robbery? So
exactly. It was a great fight. It was just a great fight between 2 great fighters, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, it was brilliant. I'm looking forward to the rematch again this weekend. As you said, it sits atop of probably the best boxing card, certainly in my lifetime. And since I've been watching boxing, there's not been a card which comes close to this. It's incredible from top to bottom. We've got Callum Smith versus Joshua Buatsi opening the bill on the televised portion. That
could have headlined easily, couldn't it?
Yeah. In years gone by, that probably would have been a pay-per-view in the UK on its own. So that just tells you everything you need to know really about this card. And boxing in years gone by has made habit of making unnecessary rematches down the years, but certainly not the case of this one here. Beterbiev and Bivol, like we said, it was a very close fight. And yeah, I can't wait to see them getting there with each other again.
So if we're looking from Dmitry Bivol's perspective, what does he have to do differently in this fight, in your opinion? And is there anything he can do differently that he didn't do in fight 1?
Well, the general consensus, and this is something that I reflected when I rescored the fight again earlier this week, was that Bivol took the bulk of the first 6 rounds. He certainly started faster than Beterbiev, but then Beterbiev came on stronger down the stretch to win the fight. I think all 3 judges gave Beterbiev the final 3 rounds. So did I when I scored it again earlier this week, for what that's worth. I'm not putting myself on the pedestal of being an expert by any means, but that's certainly how I saw it as well. It's certainly impressive for Beterbiev to finish so strongly at the age of 40. But I personally, as I said, first time around, I scored to Bivol. So I do question whether Beterbiev did enough in those rounds prior to those latter stages to earn the win. Like I said, we emphasized it a number of times already. It could have gone in anyone's favor, so it's not a robbery by any means. But I did think if I had to pick a winner, even when scoring a draw yesterday, I probably would have swung in the favor of Bivol. For me, Beterbiev was too idle during those early stages, and it left him with too much ground to make up. As I said, I also did think he won those last 3 rounds, but still, again, it wasn't enough for me. I'm not going to give my best bet away yet, but I do think Beterbiev's approach in the early rounds of that first fight was telling. If you look in the first 4, 5, 6 rounds, he was quite idle. As I said, he was quite, I wouldn't say slow, but he was taking his time with things. He was trying to nick rounds in the final minutes of rounds, almost trying to catch the judge's eye in the final stages and nick the rounds in the bank early on. It wasn't until around 7, I think it's around 7 or 8 where he really started to pick up the pace then and put it on Dmitry Bivol. But Bivol, like I said, he was brilliant in those first 5 or 6 rounds in particular. And there's also this narrative going around that Bivol was almost swept away in the final rounds, as some people make out. That isn't the case. That wasn't the case, sorry. Beterbiev may have outlanded Bivol in 5 of the last 6 rounds, but 2 of those were only by 1 punch, according to CompuBox. And they both also landed an equal amount of power shots in the 12th round as well. So it's not as though it was a tale of 2 halves this fight. Bivol taking the first half and Beterbiev sweeping the second. I think Bivol more than played his part in those latter stages as well. And again, in terms of changes that he can make, it's hard to be so picky because he was brilliant, Bivol, in that first meeting. But I'm sure he'll be coming into this fight targeting a stronger finish this time around. I'm not sure Beterbiev will be able to start faster due to the risk of that taken away from his approach down the stretch, as happened in the first fight. Beterbiev is 6 years older than Bivol as well. So Bivol certainly the fresher out of the two, I think it's fair to say. And so, yeah, I think Bivol will be coming into this one thinking, right, I need to really maintain that pace through the latter rounds as well if I'm going to have any chance of banking the rounds and earning the win here. But yeah, I won't go into my best bet yet, but that's certainly an area I think that Bivol will be targeting to improve on.
Well, just before we look at the odds for this fight, and they're unsurprisingly very tightly priced, the final thing I just wanted to pick your brains on is Beterbiev. You've already touched on his age there and how well he finished the fight. He is the older man. Prior to the last fight, I think I'm right in saying he had surgery on his meniscus, which delayed the initial first iteration of this fight. When you factor that in, will this factor, should we expect him to be fitter, given that he's had a longer recovery from his surgery, or do we think that age will take up? Because that's an interesting element for me. Like, Father Time does tend to catch up with people eventually, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think there's 2 ways of looking at that. Like you said, he won't be dealing with that issue that we know of anyway in the build up to this fight, so that could leave him in a stronger position than it did for the first meeting. But like you said, he is still 40 years of age. Father Time, like as you touched upon there, beats no man. And so could he have got old since the first meeting in October? Who knows? It's one of those. He's not had loads of professional fights. I think he's 21. I think he's had now early 20s anyway. And of course, before the Bivol match, he beat everyone by knockout. So it's not like he's got loads of miles on the clock as a pro. And if you just look at the guy, he's absolutely shredded. He's not got an ounce of body fat on him. I think he's a devout Muslim as well. So he doesn't drink, doesn't do drugs or anything like that. He takes care of himself in between camps. So he's in brilliant shape. He's a very, very fit 40-year-old. But yeah, it's an interesting one. You can certainly make the argument that, as you said, he won't be dealing with those issues with the meniscus ahead of this fight, which again could leave him in a stronger position this time around.
Okay, well, let's talk betting then on this fight, because there'll be a lot of people, I know you, like yourself, a big hardcore boxing fan, but this is the kind of card that will get everybody tuning in. Anyone who loves watching boxing, there'll be a lot of casuals, as they get dubbed by the more hardcore boxing fans as well, and they'll be wanting to know where to place their money. There's not a lot between it. Beterbiev is a general 5 to 6 chance. Bivol 11 to 10 best price, draw 16 to 1. Now, people don't need me to point this out for them, but basically, if you put £10 on either fighter, you're going to get a similar return. You're going to get just under double your money for Beterbiev and just over double your money for Bivol. The draw may interest some at 16 to 1, given how tight the first contest was. Obviously, we can run through the method of victory markets as well. But just initially, Brad, on those win odds, not a lot between them. And that's kind of how you see it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like as we said many times, that fight could have gone any direction really in the first time around. If I was having to put up a bet, which I have done, I would sway in favor of Dmitry Bivol exacting revenge. As you said, Matt, comes in at just over even money. I just think he's got greater scope really to make the necessary changes as the younger man coming into this fight. As I said, I think he'll be targeting a stronger finish this time around, given what happened back in October. I'm not sure Beterbiev, as I touched upon a moment ago, will be able to start faster, just because that could take away from his ability to enjoy a strong finish, which was a defining factor, I think it's fair to say, in the first meeting. Without those last 3 or 4 rounds, he doesn't win that fight. It's as simple as that. Like I said, all 3 judges gave him round 10, 11, and 12. I agreed with that as well. Bivol did look as though he gassed a little bit. Gassed a strong word, because he certainly, like I said, he more than played his role in those final rounds. But he did look like he had a little less in the tank and I'm sure that'll be an area he'll be looking to target. But he is only 34, but he's not 40 years old as Beterbiev is, as we've already touched upon. And so, yeah, I think there's just a great scope for Bivol to improve, really, and especially when you look at the price 11 to 10, just about odds against. I'd certainly be taking that price for this big fight here. And also, you mentioned the method of victory, Matt. I think if Bivol is going to win, it's almost certainly going to come on the scorecards. He's not a huge puncher. He's not won many fights by stoppage at all, certainly in recent years. So I think backing him to win by decision or technical decision at 7-4 is a worthy point. If you're going to back the Bivol win, it's more than likely going to come on the card. So I certainly think that's an area to look to be putting your money on.
Yeah, and more generally as well, will this fight go the distance? It is widely expected to be another one that goes the whole 12 rounds. And it's interesting that you say that, isn't it? Because with Beterbiev taking the final 3 rounds last time, you would think that Bivol's going to have to finish better and stronger, isn't he, in those championship rounds if he is going to get that decision. As Brad says, 7-4 on Bivol, winning it on the cards as well. So, yeah, you're leaning towards Bivol, but I think it's fair to say before we move on to some of the rest of this card that it's not with great conviction, and it does look like a bit of a coin toss again.
Yeah, the only outcome that would surprise me is Bivol winning by stoppage. That's the only outcome that would surprise me in this fight.
Okay, fair play. Well, that was a good little summary of the main event. There is more action that we want to take a look at on this card, so let's roll on with that. Now, as I say, we could have picked out a few fights off this card to take a deeper look at, but the one we've edged with is two familiar household names, I'm sure, for fans of boxing, and the heavyweight division always brings in more eyes, doesn't it? And Daniel Dubois takes on Joseph Parker. I think this is a cracking fight on the face of it. I really, really like just the dynamics of this. Two fighters who obviously had quite big hurdles to overcome early in their career with damaging defeats, had to go away and rebuild their stock, and they've both enjoyed some fantastic nights in more recent times, and it feels like a real pivotal step for whoever does manage to get their hand raised here in terms of, clawing towards what would be the ultimate redemption and potentially a world title in the coming 12 months. Dubois, as we'll come on to with the betting, he is put in as a favourite as this. But Brad, we were talking a bit off camera. I'm a bit surprised just how wide that is, because Parker is no mug, is he?
No, not at all. I'm not going to give my best bet away here, but I had a very strong opinion on this fight when it was first made, and I'm going to stick with that. Yeah, I couldn't believe the price when I saw it.
Yeah, well, I'll just stick the whole cards prices on your bottom of your screen there. And as you can see, Daniel Dubois is in at 4-9 favourite for this fight, and Joseph Parker around the 5-2 mark generally. It's a massive discrepancy. Brad, tell us a little bit about how you see this fight actually panning out, and the difference in styles between these two.
Yeah, before I talk about the style, it was one worrying sign, if I was in the Daniel Dubois business, was how he climbed into the ring after Alexander Usyk's second win over Tyson Fury back in December. The Parker fight had already been made by then, and he's got more than his hands full with a rejuvenated Joseph Parker, who's a much better fighter than he was in his first reign as WBO heavyweight champion 8 years ago. He's came on leaps and bounds under Andy Lee as the New Zealander, and he looked like he had nowhere to go initially. As you touched upon, they both overcame hurdles. He lost to Joe Joyce by stoppage in September 2022. Joseph Parker, and many were thinking, right, is that it now? But he's since won 5 on the bounce. The last 2 have particularly been impressive. Dominated Deontay Wilder over 12 rounds before. Okay, people are going to say it was a gun-shy Deontay Wilder who was scared to throw his right hand, but people weren't saying that before the fight. So you've got to give credit where credit's due there. And he also climbed off the canvas twice to win via majority decision against Yile Zhang last time out, who was a thunderous puncher, who, of course, knocked out Joe Joyce on 2 occasions in recent years and established himself as one of the mainstays of the heavyweight division in recent times. Parker's more than earned his shot at Dubois' IBF bout. And ever since this fight was announced, I was adamant that Parker will beat Dubois. I may have gone a bit early there for my best bet, but I was really not a fan of Dubois climbing in the ring to confront Usyk. And I also think that some questions do remain over Dubois psychologically, even though he is on a brilliant run himself, beating Jarrell Miller and Filip Hrgovic by stoppage, and then, of course, blowing through Anthony Joshua back in September inside 5 rounds at Wembley Stadium. It really looked like a coming-of-age moment there for Dubois. But he's certainly not an invincible fighter. No, there's no such thing as an invincible fighter, but I certainly think there are some fragilities about Dubois which Parker can and will exploit this weekend.
Okay, quite emphatic selection from Brad there. He's firmly with the underdog, Joseph Parker. I've got to say, when I saw the prices, and I don't confess to be a boxing hardcore at all, I'll tune into all of the sort of major cards, and I was really, really surprised in the gap there in the market. And I wouldn't be surprised if the money comes for Parker over the next couple of days. I think he should be going off shorter than 2-1 for my money, and I would be a backer at that price as well, Brad. So I agree with you. Glad to see you're endorsing the way that I was feeling as well. Okay, if we were going to pick out some fights to comment on from the rest of this card, like I said, Brad, we could feasibly do all of them, but we won't. We'll just pick out some of your leans and what way you're seeing them. So I don't know where you want to start next. Do you want to go in with? I mean, you've touched on it already. Buatsi and Callum Smith. Yeah, let's start there. How do you see that one going?
Similarly with the Parker Dubois fight, I can't believe Callum Smith is as wide as that. Joshua Buatsi, he's certainly improved. I say improved. He's not lost in any of his fights so far, but I think it's fair to say he claimed bronze at the Rio Olympics in 2016 and hasn't really kicked on as a pro as we all thought he would. He's had some good wins last time out over the likes of Willie Hutchinson, Dan Aziz as well. Certainly decent domestic level, European level wins, but he's yet to announce himself really on that world stage. And then you compare that with Callum Smith, who he's a former world champion down at super middleweight. He has lost a couple of times, but they've been to the best in Canelo Alvarez and Artur Beterbiev, who, of course, we just spent a long period talking about there. Callum Smith coming in just shy of 2-1 now. I can't really believe that. Certainly, Buatsi, I certainly would not be willing to back him at that price that you can see on your screen there. And I certainly think that, that Smith price is a price worth all over, really. Again, similar situation with the Parker fight. There's not too much to say. I just think it's far too wide.
Okay, quite a strong lean there towards Callum Smith to cause another upset. And yeah, you're right. I mean, these kind of fights, like we say, it's class all over the card here, and you do find yourself leaning towards the outsiders in these fights because there's no boxing's big fall down in the last few years, hasn't it? Has been too many uncompetitive fights. There's not a single uncompetitive fight on this card, I don't think. And that goes for this one as well. Zhilei Zhang taking on Ajit Kabayel as well. Kabayel, again, quite a strong favourite to win this one, although not as wide as some of the others that we've seen priced. Zhang, obviously, he's had some ups and downs, but I don't think anybody really saw his rise and his climb that he enjoyed in recent years on the cards. Another man who is maybe teetering towards Father Time catching up with him, but until it actually happens, it's hard to know. How do you see that one going?
Again, I was surprised by these odds, not necessarily because Caballero isn't deserving of being favourite, but I think if you spoke to most people in boxing, they consider Zhang to be the favourite for this fight. It's still a very, very good fight. Again, two fighters who have really benefited from these Riyadh season cards. Caballero upsetting Arslan Makhmudov fairly in the last 12 to 18 months, stopping him. And then, of course, beating Frank Sanchez as well, underdog in both of those fights. Brilliant wins for him to propel himself towards the upper echelons of the heavyweight division. And then Zhang, we've mentioned him as well, beating Joe Joyce twice. Superb victory for him. But prior to that fight as well, he fought Filip Hrgovic, lost on the cards. Many felt, including myself, that he won and deserved the nod in that one. Of course, he had that loss to Joseph Parker, as I mentioned a few moments ago, but has since knocked out Deontay Wilder on the Matchroom versus Queensbury 5v5, and he is a unit, Zhang. If you look at him, he is, even for a heavyweight, he's a big guy, and he's one of the biggest punches in the division again, as we saw against Parker. He really found his opening there and took it with both hands. And left Deontay Wilder in quite a heap, and of course dropped Joseph Parker twice on his fight as well. I think the trouble with Zhang is that he's on it because of his age. He's in his 40s as well as early 40s. He does struggle to maintain it across the full 3 minutes of a round, and so that does leave him in danger if he's not able to land those big shots of getting pipped on points. And I think Caballero is a very calculated. He's a very good technical heavyweight, and I think he will bulk the majority of the rounds, but I think Zhang will get to him. And again, I think he's worth taking on at that 6-4 price that you can see on your screen there. But again, it's a brilliant fight. No outcome would surprise me. This is the beauty of this card. You've got 5, 6, 7 fights where really you don't really know what to call. We could, if we want to do a full preview of this card, we could probably be here for an hour. But yeah, we won't waste all your time there. That's where I'll be going for that final fight. But yeah, I really can't wait for this card on Saturday night now.
Okay, well, that is a lovely place to just round things up then. And we've managed to take quite a good look at 4 of the 7 fights on the menu. And Brad, I don't know if you've done this consciously, you've gone for all 4 outsiders in the betting, which makes for a very tasty little fourfold if people are interested in having a little go on the multiples there. Let me just pull that up on your screen. If I could just remove all my various banners. So this is Brad's I knew I'd missed one. This is Brad's fourfold that he's picked out for the night as well. This is Dmitry Bivol to beat Artur Beterbiev at 11-10. Joseph Parker to beat Daniel Dubois 9-4. Callum Smith to get the better of Josh Buatsi at 7-4. And Zhile Zhang to beat Ajit Kabayal 11-8. There is obviously some slightly bigger prices available on individual bets, but that is your best for all 4 in an accumulator. And that's with Star Sports at the time of speaking, which is Wednesday afternoon. 43-1. It's certainly a big price, Brad. I think it's fair to say, but correct me if I'm wrong, but from the discussions we've had here, Parker would probably be your best bet at the prices.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think if he is still there after 4 or 5 rounds and Daniel Dubois hit him with everything that he can hit him with and he's still standing, I think he will ask questions with Dubois psychologically. Parker is a good mover, very good technical boxer. And I do think there's potential for Dubois to unravel, really, the longer the fight goes on, if Parker is able to hang in there. And we saw the punishment he's able to take down the years. He took a lot in that fight to Joe Joyce. It took him 11 rounds to get him out of there. And also Zhang dropped him twice and he was able to get up and win on points. So, yeah, I do think that I'm adamant that Joseph Parker will be Daniel Dubois. But again, it's a great fight. There's so many good fights to enjoy this weekend.
He's a warrior, Parker. I can't believe that price. I really can't. I think I'm going to struggle to resist getting involved. I try and resist with the boxing because I'm no expert. But yeah, I agree. It's just a bit too big, isn't it? Well, just to recap on the main fight as well, we've already said it looks a bit of a coin toss. The market tells you as much. The first match tells you as much. But gun to the head, Brad said he would lean with Bivol for the revenge, I suppose, at 11-10, and it would nicely set up a trilogy as well, Brad, wouldn't it? The cynic in me does wonder if that could come into it if it's really, really tight.
Yeah, especially with boxing, you have to consider those factors. I think with boxing, it's the Wild West with stuff like that. So yeah, it's always got to be a consideration.
I mean, you'd struggle to explain that to somebody then in a sport where judges judge what they're seeing, that could be a factor. But we all know there is a chance that could well be a factor. And Bivol to win by decision on the cards, yeah, it does feel like the most likely way. No obvious signs that he's going to stop Beterbiev based off that first fight, but we shall see. Brad, thanks very much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking through this card for you. It all comes your way on Saturday evening. I hope you're tuning in. I certainly will be. We've got plenty more coming up on the YouTube channel between now and the weekend as well. The Premier League betting show with myself and Brad will be hitting your screens tomorrow, and the EFL betting show with myself and Gab Sutton will be live on Friday as well. Do check out the first episode of our Better Days Ahead podcast as well, where I was joined with Felix Moss-Pate to talk all things punting. And if you haven't already hit subscribe, please do. We'd love to have you along. We're nearing 700 subscribers, and it'd be great to have you on board for the journey. Well, we'll see you again soon here on the Odds Now YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. See you again.